In any event, he's having a little challenge getting in, but nonetheless, when he gets here, we'll be talking with Greg about his future, his focus on the future, what he's done for clients, large and small, his thoughts on AI, and his life in general around cybersecurity. But for the most part, this these interviews that we've been having over the last couple of years have been sponsored by Cyversity. And I typically launch into what Cyversity is and how it focuses on achieving the consistent representation of women and underrepresented minorities that are all in the cybersecurity industry. And they do that through programs that are specifically designed to foster recruitment, inclusion, retention, equity, engagement, and job opportunities, training, scholarships, all the like. And that's what Cyversity has been doing for the last 7 years. If any of you on this are not a member, here's an opportunity to scan this QR code because it'll give you an opportunity to be directed to Cyversity's website and their membership portal or their membership page, and you can take a couple of steps from there. The organization is a membership organization. We started that in 2022, excuse me. We started in January of 2022 as a paid membership, and students and professional folks, they invest $20 in themselves and students, and $100 for professionals. So this process is very inclusive, very diverse, where there's a lot of folks that look a lot like you in our ranks. Some of the any organization, if you got membership dues, you got to have some benefits for those dues. What do you get for the money that you're investing? And of course, with Cyversity, there's an enormous plethora of opportunities where you can seek to find out what your career explorations are. Because some people just don't know. They know they want to get into cybersecurity. They've heard about it. They've heard about the money. Right? They've heard about the money. And so what you want to do is be able to understand the totality of what you're getting yourself into. And that's what career exploration is about, as well as cybersecurity skills assessment, where you're able to use some of our competency course assessment tools to determine where you are, even if you're not in cybersecurity or you're in technology or you're in some other form of service or a service-oriented business, and you want to be able to migrate over to cybersecurity. This will help you understand what your skills are and how relevant those skills are to this particular practice and discipline. Of course, we'll help you develop your career through Cyversity engagement events, through scholarships, through trainings, through mentorship programs, which is one of the things that Greg Richardson, who is here now, I believe he's here now, right? Let me look at my thing.
I'm here. I'm right here, bro.
There you go, Greg. Thank you for coming. Appreciate it. And mentorship programs is something that Greg is involved with tremendously. But also, Cyversity works to help connect you through to develop your network. One of our past speakers, who is the CISO for Hearst Corporation, which is a Fortune 50, said that if you don't have a network, this is really not going to work really well for you. You have to develop a network of colleagues and friends that will be able to help you through your journey, whether as mentors, advocates, or whether as partners, or what have you. And of course, the development of chapters throughout the country. We've got 9 now, getting ready. Greg is involved, part of the leadership in the Dallas chapter, as well as Sean Relaford, who's also here. But these are the things that Cyversity does to help build our capacity and support the community of women and minorities that are interested in cybersecurity. You have topic areas which are focused around career development, career spotlighting, transitioning from where you are to where you'd like to be, leadership, and tech talks. We also focus on different times of the year where different diversity highlights are in effect. As you can see, we celebrated Black History Month. We need more than a month, of course. Black History Month, but also Women's History Month. This month, May, is Asian American, Pacific Islanders, and Senior Citizens Month, where we do things that are focused around those particular groups of individuals. So we got June coming up, LGBTQ and Pride Month. September Hispanic, Latin American, Latino Heritage Month. And of course, you can see October, November, and December additional areas of highlight. These are the ground rules, right? We all know our ground rules here. It's mute yourself, please, so that there's no background noise to interrupt the conversation. We're going to be going at this for about 35 to 45 minutes. We're going to be discussing leadership, inclusion. There's going to be a question and answer period at the close, or you could put your questions into the chat box. And the session is being recorded. You probably know that. At the end of our discussion, I'll put this survey link in the chat so that you can voice your opinions on how this conversation went today. And there he is, our speaker for today, Greg Richardson. Greg, how are you, sir?
I'm fantastic. How is everyone doing? Can you hear me?
Look at that. Look at that fresh cut. I didn't even catch it.
I'm actually, well, first of all, apologies for being a bit late. I wasn't late. I left our Dallas Cyversity, I don't want to call it inaugural, but we had a breakfast this morning. A bunch of us got together. We sat, we spoke, we networked. It was, we broke bread. It was phenomenal. We'll do it again probably in about a month. So for those of you who are here that are from the Dallas area, you know, whatever, reach out or something, and we'll definitely loop you in. Whether you're whether you're a Cyversity member or not, if you just want to dip your toe in the water and kind of like see what's up. And as David said, if you want to kind of get a taste of what the benefits are, Sean was there this morning. Sean could probably attest to how valuable the conversation was. We had Wilkes just dropping gems on some of the people that were coming into or seeking to transition into cybersecurity. So just today, over probably about a 2-hour breakfast, phenomenal value. I basically came straight from there to here, and then I had technical issues where my computer needed to be rebooted and blah 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 blah. So pardon my being a little bit late on the call. Looking forward to it.
We never have a guest that is not glib and ready to bring it. It's always been good to have our guests who are definitely willing to give of themselves to the conversation. Hey, Greg, in the time that we have, you know, I really want to just dig into who you are, and then dig into what you're about and where you are. I want to spend some time on you. I want to spend some time on the industry, and then I want to spend some time on Cyversity. Is that good? And I've got my notes here in front of me, right? And so I want to just jump into it. You know, and you know, you're the CISO advisor for a pretty big firm that really manages some really heavy duty organizations and handles the security, supports the security, right? I mean, that just didn't come out of nowhere. Where'd that come from, and how did you get there? Let's start basically from as far back as you can go, want to go, just bring it full circle to the front.
So I will. I'll definitely answer your question, David. I want to give a little bit of context and one or two little, I don't want to call them rules of engagement, but I want to make I like making a conversation real for the humans. So we could talk about technology and blah, blah, whatever. Like, I'm a nerd, first and foremost. That's what's stitched into my DNA. I could talk tech all day. If it's not meaningful for you and it's not of value for you, it's not of value for me. So I say that to say, I know David said we have Q&A at the end. Ask anything. For this period of time, I am an open book. And when I say ask anything, I mean ask anything. Whether you think it's inappropriate or not, if it's inappropriate, I'll tell you it's inappropriate, but it probably won't be inappropriate. For real, if you want to find out about the industry, entrepreneurship, getting into the industry, what it looks like in the industry, how you can grow in the industry, where to grow in the industry, ask literally anything. And the reason I'm harping on that a little bit and stressing on that goes to the answer of David's question. How did this happen? How did I end up here? So I am the advisory CISO, one of them. I'm actually the first advisory CISO for Palo Alto Networks. It's almost $100 billion company. I have about 10, maybe 15 clients assigned to me. It's a new motion that Palo Alto Networks did where they allow specific clients to have an advisory CISO, and that advisory CISO builds a long-term relationship at no cost. Like, I'm not a charged resource, I'm not a consultant, but I consult with the CIOs and CXO levels of my customers literally on a weekly basis. Sean and I were talking this morning. I'm on planes constantly. Wherever my customers are, I'll fly to Chicago to have coffee, breakfast, sit in your office, talk with you for an hour because, you know, the CIO of Pepsi is struggling with blah, 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 blah. Like, literally, that's what I do. So how do you get there? Before I get onto how you get there, I mentioned the reason I was harping on ask anything. This is not limited to quote unquote our people. This is broad, but in the cybersecurity industry, and it's whenever you see something that's broad and general and universal, it's probably more so impactful on the minorities in the field. But this is a general thing. We suffer for the lack of knowledge. So people get into the field and get into the industry, and the companies that are hiring, and they're not doing this out of evil, they're doing this out of good intent. The companies that are hiring will try to box you in and give you sometimes guidelines, sometimes career paths that are constrained because they suit their objectives, but it might not be the best for you. Not everyone in cybersecurity has to be a technical expert. One of the biggest needs in cybersecurity is people that can have a human conversation and have high EQ to be able to explain to some CISO, you know, these 12 DLP, IPS, IDS, EDR, and MDR solutions that they're about to pay millions of dollars for. If you can't explain that to some Harvard MBA who doesn't speak technology, if you can't explain that, you're not able to do your job. So there is a whole market for people in cyber that are not technical. So don't let a recruiter or anyone else tell you, oh, you got to be good in math, you got to be good in technology, you got to be really strong with networking. It varies wildly. In addition to that, the other thing that we often struggle with or suffer from, as minorities even more so, is lack of knowledge in terms of pay. We all hear that money is good and you can make good money, but no one really knows what a good base, like what's a good entry salary. And trust me when I tell you, the companies that are out there hiring, it's not out of evil intent that they're doing it, but those companies will try to get you in at the best possible price that's advantageous for them. And you might be accepting a great job with a great company at 30% below what everyone else is making. Not because they're trying to spite you, but because if they can get a deal on it because you don't know better, because we never had a conversation around this is how much you could expect to make, they can get over. So, and again, get over not in a nefarious way, but them being good for their business is not always what's best for your business. So how did I get here? High school degree. I was actually a college dropout. I'm almost 60 now, and I only just graduated with a math, like literally 3 days ago, I got my transcript. I just graduated with a master's degree because in my 50s, I went back to college to finish the college that I never finished. So that's the other thing. Don't believe, and I found much success. I grew, I escalated, I elevated in cybersecurity, been in cybersecurity for 30 something odd years with a high school degree. So don't let degree or lack thereof hinder you either. So Caribbean kid, grew up in the Caribbean, never quite fit in because I was always this tech computer nerd guy when all my other friends were out at the beach or at the club or whatever. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the beach or the club. I chose to be working on technology and I stuck with that. In the late 80s, when, you know, if you said you were a cybersecurity expert in the late 80s, which I was, it didn't pay the bills. Maybe the last 10 years, it's been paying the bills for me. But everything prior to that, it was a lot of free work, a lot of sacrifice, a lot of hustle, a lot of doing novel netware administration while doing cybersecurity stuff for free. I'll give you, I won't forget, I'll keep my train of thought. I'll give you a real interesting anecdote on the first large scale pen test I did here in the US for free about maybe 12, 15 years ago, totally for free. But it literally changed the course of my career because I made the sacrifice. I put the hours in, I did it for free, even though my boss told me don't do it. But like I said, I'll get into that. So how do you get there? You work hard, you figure out what you're passionate about, you lean into it. I believe every human has a gift. You lean into whatever your gifting is. I also believe humans are not designed, and that's why I joined Cyversity. That's why I'm here today. Humans are not designed to work in isolation. There is secular, Stanford Behavioral Design Lab has tons of studies on this, on how silos and siloing doesn't work. It's mostly out of fair-centric approach. You know, don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. I can't trust anyone. It's always fair-centric, and things that are fair-centric generally don't have longevity. So this notion that I'm gonna just grind through and I'm gonna make this on my own, it don't work. You got to network. You got to connect with other people. Some of them will benefit you. Some of them you will have to benefit. But that is how you propel yourself. I have a team of people that have been with me, that I literally have a business mentor right now that can call me and tell me, Greg, that what you're doing is wrong. You have to change it. I'm an entrepreneur in addition to being an advisory CISO at the company that you just saw. And in my businesses that I own, that I am the CEO of, I have a guy that can come and tell me, stop doing that right now. I literally he pulled me outside about 2-3 weeks ago and said, you need to update all your prices. Your prices are wrong. And I did not agree with him. But because I have that type of relationship where I have a mentoring relationship with him, where he is mentoring me, I have set the principle for myself that I'm going to adhere to what he said. And it worked out in the long run. Sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes it might be, in hindsight, he'll say, well, Greg, you were right, blah, blah, blah. But you got to have people around you. So how do you get to where, how do you get to a level of success? Good people around you, lean into what you're gifted on, identify it and run hard with it, and surround yourself with the right people. Don't give up. So did I kind of answer your question, David?
You sure did in a number of ways. And it actually triggered another question while you were going through it. That question was for me. I mean, we all have a reason or a why. I mean, you said I'm a nerd, but you said I'm a nerd, and the question is, what inspired you to be a nerd? What inspiration? Where did it come from? Who did it come from? Was it watching Bill Gates? Was it watching Steve Jobs? Or was it watching, Professor Jones? What drove that?
That's a great question. You and I are about the same age, David. So both you and I were probably not watching Steve Jobs and Bill Gates because they were not successful yet when we were coming up. But that's a whole nother story. I was in my 20s when Bill Gates became not a billionaire, a millionaire, because he came up with the MS-DOS operating system, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So before him. But to answer the question explicitly, what inspired or triggered that for me? I very genuinely believe it was something intrinsic to me, because the first time I engaged and interacted with tech, I knew, as a matter of fact, I'm gonna point to something cute here in a second. I knew, it kicked the neurons inside of me, and I knew, hey, I got to do more of this. If you look over my shoulder, most of you here are techies, you could probably see that thing behind me. I keep it behind me, and I usually shine a light on it, like in my Zoom meetings and stuff like that for work, because it's my who's a tech guy on this call and who is not a tech guy detector. The non-tech people will immediately say, why do you have a keyboard behind you? My tech people, like most of you on this call, will say, oh, you have a Commodore 64 or a computer or something like that behind you, but they'll know it's not a keyboard. That Commodore 64 was one of the first, it's not even the first one I had, but that was one of the first computers I had. I remember watching, this is like real. I was in the 5th grade. This was the late 70s. I was watching Electric Company.
Nice.
Used to come on after Sesame Street on the island where I lived. I was watching that, and an ad came on with bright rainbow colors for the Commodore VIC-20. I literally saw the ad, and I was like, I don't know what that is. I don't know what I'm gonna do with it. That's for me. I need to get that. And I literally harangued my parents for years, but took about 3 years for my parents to save the money to get it. And I knew it was on. Before that, it was CB radios, like any kind of technology. The minute I engaged with it, it lit me up, and I knew I better find some way to do this for the rest of my life. That's why now, 30 plus years later, not counting my high school years, et cetera, I'm still loving what I do. Like, it's a joy for me to wake up at 7 a.m. on a Saturday morning after getting off of a plane nearly midnight last night and going out to meet people from Cyversity and have a Cyversity interview. And I had a meeting at 8 a.m. this morning. Like, it's a joy for me because this is what I believe I've been designed for this. That's why I said to answer the question, how do you get into it? I said, you got to find what you are wired for. Everyone has a purpose. Everyone has what they are built for. I believe I've been built for this, and it's not the only thing I've been built for. So don't think what you're built for is a singular purpose for the duration of your life. I'm seeing now at this stage in my life, I can see transition coming. I can see metamorphosis coming, where I used to be focused heavily on this, but some of this is now bleeding into some of this. And now the other parts of my persona are also being fed, but that takes time. So don't think it's a one-off, I'm gonna be doing this and I'll be doing it for the rest of my life. Matter of fact, even in cyber and infotech, when I started, I was a pen tester. Now I haven't pen tested probably in 10 years because there was transition, there was morphing, and I started realizing some of my skills that were other skills that I had, the ability, like you're all suffering under right now, that I can have a conversation and I like to talk. One of my bosses was like, we need to put you in front of customers to talk. Like, you're good at it. You clearly like it. You clearly enjoy it. I'm gonna make you, Greg, talk about technical things. So now the technical side can do the talking. And the more I did of that, the more they were like, dude, don't touch the technical. We'll give you 5 engineers. I have architects and SEs and engineers now that work for me, because I don't get to do the technical stuff anymore because it's more value for me to do the talking stuff. There's a drastic change in the path of my career. Whereas in the beginning, I thought, if I can get all of the certs and the CISSP and the MCSE and the CCIE, that'll be my success. I use none of that now. Literally zero. I haven't logged into a router in maybe 20 years.
Wow. Hey, Greg, this is interesting. And everyone that's here. So look, I know if you guys got questions, don't worry, raise your hand, ask the question so that Greg can answer the question for you. But I wanted to ask another question, Greg. I mean, these are incredible skills. And I said it from a profound sense of understanding the industry. These are incredible skills that you've developed. What's the day in the life of a practitioner like yourself? I mean, I know every day you're talking to them and you're helping them go through whatever challenges. Give us a little bit more detail, because I'm sure a lot of people want to be like you, or be like Julian Waits, or be like Larry Whiteside, or any of our other folks that are coming up. But give us a day in the life.
It's good. I'm a pivot off for a hot second, then I'm gonna come back to a day in the life, because a day in the life is important. The day in the life is important because you need to get I hope it widens your scope for, oh, this is unusual, this is not what I was expecting, so that you can feel like you have permission or ammunition or paint to paint your canvas the way that suits your life, because everyone's canvas is not the same. And the sidetrack, the pivot that I said I was going to do off of your question, David, and I'm coming back to answer the question all out. The pivot that I wanted to give on the question, and I know David didn't mean it like this, but I want to lean into it because I don't want anyone to hear what David asked and misinterpret it. You don't want to be like me. You don't want to be like Larry Whiteside. You don't want to be like David Elcock. You know why? Because what we're doing and the way we're doing it might not match you. You want to be the best you, what you have been built for. I saw people and I looked at people and they were ethical hackers and pen testers, and that's what I'm going to do. And now 30 years later, I don't do that at all anymore, because I realized that I was built for something slightly different. So what does a day in the life for me look like? Probably 40. And I actually said this to Sean and the rest of the guys. Is that Ray? Yep. Ray, what's up, bro? Ray was at the breakfast this morning as well. I actually said this to Sean, Ray, and the rest of the guys this morning at the breakfast. The more you advance in your career, in life in general, the less you work, but the more you think. And the problem with that is you could turn off. I could say, I'm putting my phone down, I'm done. You can't turn off the thinking. This is why a lot of very successful executives suffer from depression. You hear about suicide. They're billionaires. They got everything they want, but they're not happy. And a lot of them will tell you they're not happy. If you listen to a lot of them speak and the way they carry on, you can tell this is not a satisfied, happy person. And yeah, I'm thinking about the dude that runs Twitter. I don't want to call his name before the video gets flagged, but you could tell from everything about him, this can't be what humans were designed for. Because just having stuff and money isn't what makes you happy. Doing what you were built for in the context that you were built, that is what makes, that's what brings satisfaction. So day in the life of, for me, probably 50, maybe even 60% of my time, my quote unquote 40 hours a week is spent doing research. And when I say research, I don't mean just I'm watching YouTube videos and I'm reading. Like I am reading, I am watching YouTube videos, and I am actively taking notes. I use Notion. I take notes in every single meeting, every single engagement, every single book I read, every document I read. I have Notion on my phone. I have it on my PCs. Like if I'm watching TV or a movie, an idea comes to my mind because you can't stop thinking, I throw it down in a Notion notepad, and then I'll dig deeper into it. And I'm looking, okay, what can I extract out of this? The reason I can coin the Stanford Behavioral Lab study on working in silos is because I read their study. Because I needed to prove to one of my customers who I was trying to tell, you've been trying to build out a computer platform using 15 different vendors, which is very common in cybersecurity. Now we're talking a little bit of tech. It's very, very common to go about this. We're going to go best of breed approach, but it's been very proven that it doesn't work well also. So I needed to make a case to my customer, a CIO of a company, I'll say who it was, of Motorola up in Chicago. I need to make a case to them on why they need to consider something different. So I had to go and do studies. And one of the best studies I found was the Stanford Behavioral Design Lab study, where it talks about nothing about a human was meant to be worked in a silo. And one of the big pushbacks against not working in silos when it comes to technologies is, oh, but if you buy everything from one place or one or two or three places, you're increasing your risk. Because you're putting, quote, all your eggs in one basket. The amount of times I hear that nonsensical statement is foolish. It's like sad. For most other things in your life, all your eggs are in one basket. Most food comes from one or two places. Like most meat is processed by one or two companies. Almost all chicken is processed by one company in the entire world. Almost every glasses that you have is manufactured by one single company, and you don't want to know where they're based. And you need food way more than you need your cybersecurity. And no one worries about it. No one's out there actively trying to say we got to have 8 different places to get beef from. But in cybersecurity, we're comfortable with it. So I often find myself having to push back against ideas, paradigms, high-level stuff like that. So I need to arm myself with data on that. I also do a lot of research in that 50 to 60% of my day on what are the cyber criminals doing right now. Now that is where my technical side comes in handy. Former pen tester, former builder of reverse code and reversing to find out what the attacks look like. I can now unpack the threat reports that I'm seeing from XYZ study and XYX study and say, all right, this is how they're attacking. And I can now prep my customer and say, listen, we can see an uptick in attacks on this. You need to go ahead and get ready for it. You need to at least have sufficient visibility to be able to react if and when it hits you. According to the size of the customer, I'll even take that research a little bit deeper. If they are a bank, then I will dig deeper and say, how are these attacks hitting other banks? If they're a big enough bank, like a Bank of America, I'll say, how are these attacks hitting other banks that have heavy presence on Wall Street, like JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Citibank, US Bank? I literally will dig into that so that when I'm meeting with the CIO or the CISO of Bank of America, I can say, listen, all of your peers are getting hit with this. If you're not getting hit with it yet, it's because you haven't noticed it. It's not that you're really not getting hit. So a lot of my time is spent doing research, taking notes, and then preparing my content, whether that is an official deck or whether it is a talk track to be able, notes that I can refer to talk to a customer about. I need to have that ready so that when I'm in front of the customer, I can then speak. The other 40% of the time is getting to customer meetings and meeting with customers. Probably 10% of my time is entertaining customers, but that is by design. It's because I'm not good at it. I am not good at small talk and over on a golf course. Hey, how's the family? How's the weather? It's not my strength. So whereas everyone else in my industry says, oh, you got to be good at golf, you got to do golf, blah, blah. I don't golf well. I suck at golf. I only started golfing about a year ago. Again, don't follow anyone else's pattern. You got to lean into what works for you. My whole career, I heard that, by the way. You got Greg, dude, if you want to grow in business, you got to play golf. I'm only playing golf now because my knees are too bad for me to play basketball. I'd much rather play basketball, but I can't afford to be in the hospital after playing a half-hour one-on-one with y'all psychopaths on the court on Saturday mornings. So now I got to play golf because no one ain't going to run into me when I'm playing golf. That's why I'm playing golf.
That's the reality. That's the reality. You know,
reality.
It's been said that in a time of peace, you've got to prepare for war.
Facts.
How do you prepare the companies that you're dealing with, not just from a philosophical approach, because the technical approach that you're bringing has to, I'm assuming that the technical approach that you deliver has to also generate revenue. It just can't be just that I'm going to spend all this money on defense and security, and it's just the expense side of the business. How do you help that company prepare for war, not at the same time sacrifice performance, internal customer, external customer, but also help them generate revenue? I mean, creating the differentiator, if you will.
One of the big things that I found with my customers, this is unique to cybersecurity. Some of it has to do with the immaturity of the industry. Some of it has to do with the immaturity of how we've grown in the industry. So we should have been further along, but we're not, because, you know, the industry is still it's a teenager, but it still acts like it's an infant. So if you've ever seen someone that's been out of sync, like in real life, like a human that's been out of sync like that, in terms of they're a teenager, but they're acting like a baby, you know, it gives you the creeps. I'm like, I just want to smack them. The cybersecurity industry is like that. So a big thing that I deal with probably on a weekly basis with many customers, including those that I've been engaged with for more than a year or two, they have no idea of where they are. Like they often need assessments. They often need, Greg, come and spend a couple of days with the team and tell us, like, we'll brain dump everything out on a number of whiteboards and tell us what we're missing, where the gaps are, where we need to strengthen. And once you have your arms around that, then you can start building, all right, well, there's an intermediate step. You figure out, all right, this is where you're at right now. This is your situation. You then take that, this is your situation, and you then need to apply, Mr. Customer, what's your risk appetite look like? Where can you afford risk? I'll give you a real world example. And after that, I'm gonna give the example of the first pen test I did. Real world example, meeting with, I won't say the name of the company, a car manufacturer, not too long ago. Large car manufacturer here in the US. So it's one of the big three. So you can figure out which one, but I won't give more information than that. And I'm changing the name of the model of the car to purposefully obscure it because some of it's confidential data. We did the assessment, this and that and the other, and there was gaps all over the place. And there was like, all right, we got to fix these gaps. Great. And I, you know, the typical thing, you want to go down a zero trust route, you got to, you know, probably get a good grip on your users. This customer told me we could care less about user identification, like IAM, user access management. It's not important to us. I was like, how can you say it's not important? Like, you got to know who your users are. He said, no, Greg, because we got 5 or 6 plants. They're located here, 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 here. Those plants spit out, and this is where I'm changing the name, a new Escalade every 15, the number is true though, every 15 seconds, an Escalade comes off the line. If that plant goes down for an hour, it costs us $13 million. We have zero risk appetite for that plant to go down. So do whatever you need. And there's no users in that plant. There ain't no one logging on with user access to go and use their laptop. Only thing in that plant is OT devices, robot arms, automation, et cetera, et cetera. Protect that, bro. So the whole approach had to change because now we know this is where their gaps are. We know this is what their risk appetite is. They have zero appetite for any risk there, and they have some appetite for risks in the corporate headquarters. So where are we going to focus first? We're going to beef up their OT security. We're going to beef up their ability to see when something is on that network, what anomalous behavior looks like, and the ability to block against that anomalous behavior. That was their priority. So then you rinse and repeat. You go to the next customer's risk appetite might be completely different. But the premise of assess, figure out risk appetite, build a technological solution for it, that's the super, super, super high level of how you help these customers. I promised if I may I, David? You're muted, but I'm gonna
mute.
take.
Yes, and then after you answer that question, Beverly, I see you have an question. So after he answers this last question, please jump in, Beverly.
Got it. So I promised, and I'm glad I get to keep my promise that I said I would. I promised I'd tell you about my first pen test here in the US. So about 20 years ago, my wife and I and our kids moved, our daughter at that time, now we have daughters, moved up to the US from the Caribbean. I'm from a little island called St. Martin. I saw someone in the chat saying they're in the Bahamas. Rock on, my bro, or sis, I'm not sure. But either way, so moved up from St. Martin to the US. We moved to Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm no longer there. I'm in Dallas, Texas now. And in Charlotte, I, 20 years ago, trying to get gigs doing cybersecurity, because again, that's all I did. They were like, nah, we ain't got no cybersecurity people, but they were hiring networking people. So one of the things I did to put food on the table, while cybersecurity wasn't feeding, I went out and got a whole bunch of certs, CCIE, blah, 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 for Cisco, because I knew people use a lot of Cisco networking. So there was this one company that was hiring a Cisco engineer to go and deploy Cisco stuff, switches, routers, some voice over IP stuff, no big deal. So I got a contractor gig to go down and go to a factory down in South Carolina. They make literally Afrin nose spray. Like, this is huge. This is $1 billion company. This is the assembly line where they make a lot of those over-the-counter drugs that you use. So I go down there, and my job is to deploy a couple of Cisco switches. So I'm down there for like a couple of weeks, driving down every day, deploying Cisco switches. Incidentally, when my wife and I moved here, we had one car. I was driving down in our Dodge Caliber, which we bought for $5,000 at 25% interest, because when you move to the US at an old age, you have no social security number. So 20 years ago, I got my social security number, and the banks was like, you worse than no credit, than bad credit. You are zero credit. Like, my credit score was literally zero, because there was nothing on it, because it just appeared as a, 40-year-old man with no credit score. So the banks wasn't having me at all. So it was like, yeah, you're going to pay a lot for this $5,000 car. Long story short, I was broke as I don't know what. Driving down to South Carolina, deploying these switches. And I decided I'm going to bring a laptop with some of my pen testing tools. And I asked my boss, can we also offer them security? Because I wanted to do security. My boss said, no, under no circumstances do it. You know what I did? I spoke to the plant manager, and I was like, can I hang around after hours? So during the day, I was deploying their Cisco switches. At night, I was pulling out my own personal laptop and running pen tests on their network, just assessment pen tests, to see what was going on. So I was now working 18 to 19 hours a day. I was literally pulling out into the parking lot, sleeping in the car for 4 hours, and walking back in the morning, 8 o'clock, to come and do the Cisco switch deployment. Did that for about 4 weeks. So now the Cisco switches are deployed, and I have all of this pen test information of stuff that's jacked up on their network. Talk to my boss, can I just tell them this? He's like, no, they didn't ask for that. They didn't pay for that. Don't talk to them about security. Talk to them about their switches. All good. I'm a little bit stubborn. You can't tell that yet. We got into the meeting in front of the CIO, the CEO, and the CFO, and a couple of other team members, and we talking, and I give my whole presentation. This is what we deployed. Your Cisco switches are in place. This is how it's segmented. Boom, 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 full deploy, everything good. And then Last slide, I just shifted it. Oh, FYI, we also did a quick assessment of your network and we found these 5 things. And, you know, there's no charge for that. There's no cost. We just wanted to let you know. So be aware of it and boom, boom, boom. And like literally took no more than 15 minutes out of like a 2-hour meeting for me to present that. What do you think the company did? Company thanked my boss. It was a great job. Thank you for the great deployment of the Cisco gear. How can we get more security stuff? And the security gig ended up being about 10 times more valuable for my boss than the stupid switch deployment. And I only say stupid because I was doing it spitefully. And he ended up thanking me so much for it that he was like, Greg, you were right. Now I sacrificed. I didn't get paid a nickel for any of that. He got paid for it. I think he gave me $1,000. And I was grateful for the $1,000 because I was trying to show him there's an opportunity here. That was a sacrifice that I made, and I was glad to make the sacrifice. I'm still friends with that guy. He's still a partner and someone I can call if I need something down in Charlotte, North Carolina. Is a genuinely good dude. Yeah. But he then, after that, was like, Greg, we changing approach here. We're going to build a whole security practice. We want you to run the security practice.
There you go. Hey,
that's what sacrifice gets you, and that's what you got to be willing to break the mold sometimes to get ahead in this industry. Beverly or David, whoever I need to handle.
I'm just going to say the stupid switch statement is a little bit true because they're kind of old hat now with the cloud coming in. Hey, Beverly.
Thank you so much, Mr. Greg Richardson, for being with us on this call today. This question is in regards to workplace trauma. I'm switching gears on you right here temporarily. I'm asking this question for a friend. Okay, so what type of advice would you give to my friend who has suffered from some kind of moderately trauma from workplace, and which led to, you know, problems with health and also severe burnout? The friend actually ended up leaving a job, took a 4-month recovery period, in which, glad to say that she's getting back on her feet and she has gotten another job in an area that she wants to be in, but a little nervous and a little scared that she may be jumping out of the frying pan, possibly into the fire. What type of advice would you give that person? And she has talked to coaches and tried to, you know, see if she could get like maybe a therapist, but with the insurance plan, it's like, well, since you're not thinking about hurting yourself or anybody else, you're not depressed, you can't get that. We'll give you a coach.
At least not for free. Yeah.
Yes.
I got you. This is a pleasure. Thank you for the question, Beverly. That's a phenomenal question. How do we tackle that in the workplace? I don't know the entire situation of your friend and everything else that went around her. Based on one thing you said, as a matter of fact, I'll ask you, Beverly, did they switch industries now? Because you said they're now in a new job in something that's in where they like or where they're passionate about. Was there a switch of industry or a switch of type of role involved?
It's a switch of role. The industry is IT, but the role has went from more of a service desk, customer service, desktop support to cybersecurity or security analyst. Perfect.
That's kind of what I thought. So and again, without having all the information, you know, without having all the details, one of the things that we, and by we, I mean us humans in general, need to be better about, and this is where I can lean into what I said earlier, we don't do this on our own. You got to have good people around you all the time, early. And don't fall into the typical leaders, dark triangle mentality, because dark triangle, Google it if you want. Dark triad, sorry, is what a lot of leaders have. A lot of entrepreneurs have it. Anyone that you see wants to be in politics or wants to be a CEO, you probably have dark, Google it. after this call, dark triad traits that you need to keep managed really, really carefully. Because who also has dark triad? It's psychological traits. Who also has dark triad traits? Killers, sociopaths, like Jeff Dahmer. Like I'm being dead serious. There's a thin line between a politician, a CEO, and a serial killer. They all have that dark triad going on in their personalities. That's why you need to stay on top of it, and you need to have people around you that could call you and say, you're losing it right now. You know, you got to check yourself. In your friend's case, I don't think she was losing or checking herself or anything like that, but she probably overstayed where she was. You got to be sensitive enough to yourself, to your own situation, to know this is not healthy for me. I grew up in the Caribbean in a mentality or in an environment where, first of all, we were told kids are to be seen and not heard. And that does something to you. That instills in you, I got to just be quiet and play my role. And, you know, I ain't gonna disturb no one. So if something goes wrong, the inclination is I better just be quiet and suck it up. I just got to be toughen it up. And I was also grew up, and most of us probably heard this similar. Sticks and stones will break my bones, but words can't do me nothing. That's a lie from the pit, fam. Words can hurt you. If you are in an environment where the words are hurting you, you need to get the heck out of that environment sooner than later. Because as your friend Beverly is now experiencing, a long period of time after you are out of the environment, you're still dealing with the damage that was done because you left yourself in a bad environment. So workplace trauma, and this goes for racism, it goes for any kind of work, sexism, goes for just a bad boss that doesn't know how to speak to people, whatever it is. If you pick that up once, twice, 3 times, you got to start finding an exit strategy, because your own mental health, without your own mental health, without your own peace of mind, you're not going to be able to do anything else. You're not going to be able to be successful because you're not resting, you're not peaceful, you're not in a good place. So we have to do self-care. We have to do soul care constantly. Be aware. Last thing I'll say, and then I see a gentleman whose name I can't read because my glasses are dirty and I can't pronounce your name. I don't want to say it wrong, but I see your hand up. I'm going to come to you immediately afterwards. Very, very important. A very, very easy predictor of burnout. And this goes for most industries, pastors, churches, psychologists, doctors, lawyers, cybersecurity people, whatever. The minute you find yourself in a state, entrepreneurs especially, the minute you find yourself in a state where you see it's needed for you to work 7 days a week and you cannot stop yourself from working, you're right on the cusp of burnout. Self-care, soul care means you're sensitive to the fact that, dude, I know there's a ton of work waiting. It gonna wait till tomorrow. Because guess what? If you pass out and drop down dead, the company, the customer, the boss, whoever, the business ain't gonna stop because you died, bro. You're not that important. Put the phone down, concentrate on something else, and take care of yourself. I won't pronounce your name. Dude up in the upper right-hand corner. Yeah, there you go.
His name is Dio. Go ahead, Dio.
Thank you. Dio, talk to your boy.
Yes, thank you for everything. I would want to know, how would I work in teams? Because currently I'm studying and there are school projects. But because this is not my first course, I'm well versed in many of the technologies compared to others. So how do I prevent people from exploiting me to the point that I'm doing most of the work and they are also not benefiting because they're just waiting for the finished product?
Is this in a, don't mute yet. Is this in a school environment or is this in a work environment? Which is it?
School environment.
School environment is a little bit easier than a work environment. In a school environment, you're primarily being graded from what you do. So if you got to keep your work secret, hand it in at the last minute after everyone else did their work halfway, whatever you got to do, protect yourself, because you definitely don't want people taking advantage of you. In a work environment, you don't have that luxury sometimes. A lot of times you are going to be doing work that helps other people succeed, like I did with my free pen test. My boss got millions off of it. I promise you, I did not get millions off of it. I got my normal hourly salary rate for not even for the hours where I did the pen test, but for the future security work we did. I got my hourly rate. That's all I got. Like he never said, hey, Greg, here's a check for, 100,000, nothing like that at all. So sometimes in work scenarios, you're going to have to sacrifice and you will give up to make someone else benefit. But in a school environment, I don't know if I would let everybody else figure it out on their own. And because in school, you are going to be graded by you. And the degree that you end up with is your degree. So if you are somehow allowing people to take advantage of you, you got to stop it. That's also a part of soul care. That's a great question. Thank you, Dio or Gio. I hope I got it right. Any other questions, thoughts, comments? I thought there would be way harder questions than this, but this is cool. I ain't trying to poke the bear. Brendan, you seem to have a question.
It says suspended involuntary in the Premier profile.
Ray, mute. Brendan, and then Marilyn. Brendan, do you have a
Are you
question?
there?
Yes, I do. Thanks,
Fire,
Gregory, for you're good. Thanks again for providing this really insightful information. Just had a quick question. So I'm currently an account executive at a large tech company based here in Austin, and I'm looking to definitely probably in the near future move into cybersecurity sales. And I was just wondering, should I be looking at taking any courses or how should I guess deepen my knowledge? I do also have a computer science background as well too.
How, I gotta ask, and it's not that it makes a difference, but it makes a difference in how I answer. How old are you, Brendan?
I'm 29.
How long have you been working with that major company that you're with now, roughly?
About a year.
Yeah, so it would probably be of value for you to take some very specific course. And what I'm thinking of, if you have the bandwidth time-wise and the money to do something like this, take one of those executive level trainings. MIT has them, so week long. Harvard has them, Yale, Stanford. Take one of those. Cost a couple $1,000s. They're not free, they're not cheap, but it equips you, and they're MBA level courses. Because to be in executive sales, you're mostly speaking to non-technical people. So the better you are able to have a business conversation, the better you can talk EBITDA and return on investment and cost of customer acquisition and all of the other stuff, the more successful you're going to be. So yeah, maybe take a course or two to sharpen your skills and develop a language and a vocabulary to have those types of executive conversations. But I wouldn't say take a sales course. I think based on what you've said, you have computer science knowledge, computer science background, a degree in computer science. You've worked in industries and at large companies for a while. All you're really trying to do is sharpen a little bit so that you can reach to some, VP of sales that's hiring or whatever and say, hey, give me a break. Give me a shot. I got the skills that I can have this conversation. Then the other big thing, that's where Cyversity comes in. This was pretty much the whole conversation this morning over breakfast. Network. And when I say network, I ain't talking about, hey, you go to the cocktail party, you shake 12 hands, you hand out 12 business cards, and then you bounce. That's not networking. Networking is building a relationship with people who can extend their network to you. Because they have that relationship, because they've learned about you, they've learned your skills, they've learned your abilities, they see your drive, and they're now willing to say, I vouch for that guy. I was giving an example of the company that I work for. When we put a job opening up and say, hey, we are hiring, sales is a good example. When we say we're hiring an account manager in sales, and I'll tell you FYI, an account manager at most cybersecurity companies selling cybersecurity stuff, you're making hundreds of thousands of dollars. You're not making $100,000. You're making multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars. These are highly desirable jobs. When they put an offer out, they say we're hiring a guy. Within a day, they have over 10,000 applicants.
Mhm.
You know what the recruiting manager does? They look through probably the top 50. And when I
Yeah.
say the top 50, I mean the first 50, because they don't have a methodology to say these are the best. They're literally spot checking, grabbing 50, pulling 10 out of the 50, and they run with that. So now you, in the other 9,950, get disposed by the wayside because just that's the luck of the draw. How do you combat that? Networking.
Got it.
If you know someone that can call that recruiter and say, hey, I know Brendan, I vouch for him, give him a shot. Now your resume gets pulled out of the pile. No one ain't giving you no job for free, but at
Right,
least
right.
you get an at bat to where you might have an interview. You might have a second opt. So sharpen your skills and network. Super, 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 super important.
Let me add
Marilyn,
something to
you were
that.
next, and then LaRon.
Let me add something to your statement.
Go through, David.
Greg. Let me add something to your statement. Was it Michael Palmer? He's a CISO for Hearst Corporation. He suggested a book to our audience when he was here, and that book is called Never Eat Alone. Right. So Never Eat Alone is a book that talks to you about how you should network so that when you have these types of relationships, internal and external to your organization, it gives you an opportunity for other folks to speak for you when those decisions are being made. So they're in the room deciding who should get this next position, and you're not there. Someone else can speak up for you and speak on your behalf. And certainly you should never eat alone. There was a real concept about not even eating lunch alone, just eating lunch with someone else just about every day so that you have that opportunity to grow and expand your network just through basic networking and basic interpersonal skills. So I don't see who's the next person that has a question, but
Marilyn.
Come off mute and, well, I don't have to tell Marilyn to come off mute. there's no need
Up,
to do
Marilyn.
that.
I take that as a compliment, David. Thank you.
Absolutely, dear. I can't see you. I want to see you, but okay.
Okay, oh, I'm not visible today.
Never mind then. Never
Yeah.
mind.
Hello, Mr. Richardson. My name is Marilyn Harris. I'm out of Houston, Texas, and I'm a 4-year Cyversity member. I'm also a master's prepared psychiatric nurse and an MBA, and I was the speaker in this session the last time.
I remember, and I remember you from the Cyversity conference in, was it Orlando, somewhere, Florida, whatever, earlier, end of last year, beginning of this year. I remember you from there as well. I remember you well. You were transitioning from another industry and you worked your way into cyber at a late stage in life.
Yes, all of that is true. And then that's part of my comments and my question. And so I really, really am aligned with many of the things you're saying, especially around self-care of cybersecurity professionals, knowing when it's time to leave a job. I've experienced these things in my, X amount of years of work life, and the importance of networking. My question to you is, in terms of identifying things from the outside of an organizational culture, for someone like me, a non-traditional tech person looking to work with organizations, what suggestions do you have that I look for in terms of an organizational culture? Because remember, I'm coming in educated, I'm coming in with a breadth of knowledge from other companies working around the world, and that could go one of many ways. Thank you.
It's good. It's a phenomenal question, Marilyn. That's a part of the whole, you have to be self-aware. You got to know what your lane is, and you got to make sure that the company, and I'm going to comment on that because you asked about the company, check for company culture. You got to make sure their culture more or less aligns with, and you fit into it. I would suggest to you, though, more important than the company culture is the culture and the personality and the leadership style of the person you're going to report to. I have been in companies with awesome culture, but the boss that I worked for, and candidly, especially in tech companies, you got a lot of technical people that were technically so strong that they worked themselves up into leadership, but they're really, really, really terrible leaders. have no empathy. I had one boss pull 500, myself and 500 other people up. This was during the pandemic when, there was lots of rioting in the country, and one after the other, people are getting, African-American people were getting shot, killed, choked, died. Like, I don't know if you remember that period, but there was like a 2 or 3 month period where it was like 4 or 5 bad, really terrible things happened. Old boy came on a call. He called his whole department up, 500 or so people, and said, listen, this is really bad. It's tough. He called a meeting at like 2 in the afternoon. And this is, literally 500 people in this meeting, on a town hall type meeting. And it's really bad. And, we condolences for everyone. FYI, this is a group of employees where they're mostly African-American. And he's not. And it's really bad and blah, blah, blah. So what we're going to do is this, we're going to give you the rest of the afternoon off. So you get off from 2 to 5. But after that, we can't help you. Tomorrow morning, you better be here. Like, this is him. This is his condolences meeting because the earth is on fire and the world is coming to an end. Tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock, everyone better be here and better be ready to work. Otherwise, we're going to replace you because the work has to be done. And I pulled him aside afterwards, like, dude, is you crazy? Like, you can't tell that to people. And he did not get it. He wasn't trying to be offensive. He had no idea that people would legitimately be hurt or be sad or be depressed or be upset because African-Americans are being killed. It never occurred to him. So you also check the company culture, but more so, get to know the person that you're about to work for. That's why the job interview process is so important, because you're not just interviewing, you're not just letting them interview you, you are also interviewing them. Like, what kind of person is this I'm going to work for? Are we compatible? If that person is a atheist and you are a heavily spiritual person, that should trigger a red flag for you. I'm not saying you can't go work for them, but you should at least be aware that there might be some conflict or a tension at some point when you want to bring your spirituality into the workplace, because old boy ain't gonna have it. So at least if you're aware of it and you've been paying attention keen enough, these are the things that you want to look out for. You want to look out for anywhere where the culture of the people you're dealing with are vastly incompatible with your belief system, your culture, your way of working, your way of expression, et cetera, et cetera. Laurent Bethel. I probably just brutalized your name, and I apologize. But you're in the Bahamas, right? So I feel like we're brothers already.
Yes. Good afternoon, everybody. My question is, how did you get your start to work in the US coming from St. Martin? And at what age did you make that move?
That's a question right there. Now, this is what I mean when I say great question, Laurent. We often struggle because we don't talk about these kinds of things and how they work. But I promised, ask me anything. And that right there is a tough question, but it's absolutely not inappropriate. It took my wife and I 13 years, 13, to immigrate from St. Martin to the States. The US and the state and St. Martin has no relationship. Like we're not born with US rights. My wife and I are born with Dutch passports. Our kids have Dutch passports, and I was early 40s or something like that when I was moving to the US. So, some 20 years ago, 13 years before that, we started the process in St. Martin. And we went through a green card process. Someone sponsored us, and it took 13 years. It also took about total all in over the 13 years, it took about $50,000 US. So it was not cheap. It was not quick, but, I won't take credit for this either. It wasn't my idea. I told my wife, we good. Like, I had a business, I was doing cybersecurity, but my wife kept pushing me. And again, we're not built to do things alone. So you better find you a good spouse that can call you and tell you, you're wrong on this. My wife told me I was wrong. Greg, you could be doing better than we are doing in the Caribbean. We need to try to see if we can get out of here. So I listened to her. I was stubborn about it for about a year. And then I was like, okay, we'll start the process and then we'll see how it goes. And through a long, arduous process, we moved over. I was in my upper 40s. Up to that point in my life, I had never owned a home. I had never bought a car like full out. I had owed a bank for cars. I had, when we, and you want the numbers? I'll give you the numbers. When we moved to Charlotte, North Carolina, about 20 years ago, I had $3,000 in savings. It cost about $1,000 deposit on an apartment and to ship one pallet of stuff from St. Martin to the US. So by the time I got here, I had about $900. My wife had no job. I had no job. I was literally, and we had a daughter at that point. I was literally running around going to Sam's Club. Sam's Club in Charlotte used to have a networking event for business people. I was going there every Thursday morning. They'd give out from 6 to 8 o'clock donuts and coffee for free, and you can hand out business cards. I was handing out business cards. I was going to every Chamber of Commerce meeting, handing out business cards, and one of those business cards is what led me to the guy that contracted me out to go and do the work down at the company in South Carolina. Slow, arduous, tough process. But that was the process. There was absolutely no easy road. But one of the things we spoke about on our breakfast this morning, and I'm referencing it on purpose because I want to see more people that happen to be on this call in Dallas at the breakfast next time because it was awesome. One of the things I referenced was you got to have a plan. We had a plan. Our plan, we thought it would take 5 years. It took 13 years, but we had a plan. And our plan was we're going to get there. We're going to work for a couple of years. We're going to buy a house. We're going to build up. We're going to get another kid, et cetera. It's like it was a plan. None of it was accidental. Some of it, sometimes the plan changed, but we built a plan out and we executed against that plan.
Great. This has been great. We've got, can you guys hear me? Because I think I've had some internet problems here as of late. But, I did want to ask a question, Greg, just pivot a little bit and ask about philosophically, there seems to be some more, I don't know if the word is ecumenical, but there seems to be more substance behind what you are, where you are and what you're doing. Can you speak about that a little bit? What's the foundation of, All right, we've talked about this, Greg, so give it to me.
David think he's slick. There's some ecumenical. My dude purposely used a word that obscures what he's trying to say, but I respect that. I got you, David. I got you. What David is very strongly inferring is I have a very spiritual background. I purposely don't lean into it overtly because I know not everyone believes the same way and not everyone is there. I also am vehement. So what I mean, let me be even more explicit. I've been a Christian for maybe since I was about 5 years old. I mean, a Bible believing, 100% fear God, find God's purpose for my life and adhere to it type of a Christian. Like I'm not kidding around Christian at all. Am I perfect? No. I'm divorced once, was a terrible husband, cheated on my wife, still struggle with sin today. I struggled with sin this morning. Like I ain't saying I'm perfect, but I have a belief system and that belief system guides me. So what I didn't say, but it was in the background, and that's probably what David is getting at. When I say you got to figure out what you're built for, what I actually mean, what Greg did for Greg, I prayed and I said, God, what do you need me to do to make your purpose occur in the world? It's not about what do you, God, what do I do? What's my purpose? That's not what it is. It is, I will do whatever drives God's will forward. And that is like, that's when God said, well, I put technology in you. You probably need to work in technology. I also put studying and Bible and strong belief system in you. You can lean into that too. You know the amount of times I ask God, should I quit technology and go and be a preacher? Like, is that what you're saying, God? And God told me, no, dum-dum. Keep working in tech because someone needs to be a light there in tech too. So that's what David is talking about what so that is the background that feeds me. And if my camera is working right, behind me should be fogged out. But I'll unfog for a second. Hold on. On my library shelf behind me is this book. Can you read it? Which one is this? Python Data Science Handbook. Right next to the Python Data Science Handbook is Old Testaments to the Epigrapha, which is the book of Enoch, and a full study on all of the extra books of the Bible. Right next to each other. You know why? Because God put in me a desire to study his Bible, and God also put in me a desire to be really good at tech. And for years, I couldn't figure out how the two of them work together. But I was like, God, I'm gonna be obedient. I'm gonna study your Bible. I'm gonna try to live right. And I'm gonna study tech because I believe you gifted me for that. That's the underpinnings of it. That's what, when I show up in the workplace, I don't tell anyone I'm a Christian. But many people ask me, dude, why are you, something's different about you. Daily, I get asked that. Up to, I was in Orlando yesterday. I emailed someone and they emailed me back. They're in Orlando, a customer I was meeting with. And I got to pull it up so it's accurate. Hold on, because I don't want to misquote. Give me 1 second. I want to make sure and get the phrasing exactly right. This is what the customer replied to me, because I have on my email, my work email, Palo Alto Networks, advisory, CISO, blah, blah, blah. At the bottom, I have a little quote. Don't be motivated by selfish ambition, but consider others more important than myself. That's on the bottom of every email I send out to JP Morgan Chase, CIO Jamie Dimon, the chief of Kraft, the chief of GM and Ford. They all get that at the bottom. Customer hit me back yesterday, Greg, isn't that from Philippians 2, chapter 2, verse 3? I was like, oh, I don't have Philippians 2:3 there. Huh? And if you heard how I phrased it, I purposely took out the these and the thous and the thus. But someone caught it. And now I have a whole conversation going with that CIO because he caught that, oh, so you believe in God? Yeah, nice. Okay, now we can dig, let's go. Nice. So it's a fully integrated part of my life that I'm not ashamed of, but I ain't gonna hit you over the head with it either.
It's a good thing, Greg. You take these skills that you have, you pair them with your purpose, and then you transfer them to your customers and your mentees. How are you doing that? And I know we don't have very much time left, and I know there's a couple of other questions, but answer that question, and let's get to the rest of the folks who have questions here as well.
The biggest, and I hinted this already a couple of times in what I said, the ability to have good EQ, to be able to convey a message in a clear manner. One of the biggest things that's still missing in cybersecurity, it's a key requirement to have good EQ, to be able to convey a good message to a customer. And that is the preamble to delivering a good message to a customer. You got to listen to the customer. So how do you help the customers where they're at to do these transformative things in their networks? How do I help Ford or GM transform from a 150-year-old car company that never used computers to someone that now is using computers on their very assembly lines that they can't have them stop because it's going to cost them $13 million an hour? How do you that's a massive transformation. There's an elevator company that every one of you that you've ever been in an elevator, you've been in their elevators. They're called Otis Elevator. They're based up in Connecticut. You all know the guy because he's who introduced me to Cyversity. He's their cyber CTO. We helped them with a complete transformation as well. Same thing. They're a hundreds of years old company building freight elevators before cars existed. How do you transform them? Because you listen to them. And that's something that you don't find in tech a lot. In tech, you find a lot of type A personalities that walk into the room and they like to hear their own voice a lot. It's something that God works on with me to this day. Like in this instance, I feel like it's okay for me to talk because David brought me here to talk. But I can't always be the guy talking. A lot of times you got to go into a meeting, you ask a question and you shut up and listen. And then you ask another question and you shut up and listen and you take notes. If you consume enough of where the customer is, you will, if you're good at your job, you're going to hear, oh, here's a deficiency, here's a deficiency, I can help here, I can bring some transformation here, there's a cultural change that's needed here, and now we're off to the races. Now we could talk about how we're going to transform. But if you walk in with your, I know, we sell the best firewall, we sell the best whatever, I'm the best at blah, 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 I'm the best engineer, and you walk in with a, well, I can, hold on, Mr. Customer, this is how we're going to do this. And you don't even know what that customer is, where that customer is at, you probably are not helping your customers. Listen more, talk less.
Seek to understand before you seek to be understood.
And when you think you
Mhm.
understand, stop and seek to understand some more, because we
Absolutely.
probably don't seek to, we probably did what's called inactive listening, which is you're just listening for an opportunity for when they
To
stop
speak.
talking so that you could go.
Interesting.
You weren't listening to collect data. You were listening for them to stop. After you do that 2-3 times, listen again, ask them a question again. I have asked Palo Alto, Mike, the company I work at, one of the first things I did when I started there, I revamped their entire executive briefing strategy. Because the executive briefings would be, we're going to fly you in a private jet, blah, 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 up to our headquarters in Santa Clara, California. And we're going to bring in all our leaders and they're going to tell you about everything. Like, that's not an executive briefing. That's some kind of a show, a long-term demo. How much time did you give the customer to talk? Nothing. We're just telling them all our best stuff. Like, that's useless. If we have a 4-hour executive briefing, it needs to be 2.5 hours hearing the customer talk.
Right.
And after you hear the customer talk, then you can brief them.
Right. Interesting. Hey, let's get to the questions in the audience before we close out. Who's next? Who's next? I don't want to chew up your name, so please.
Yeah, I can't either. I'm seeing you. You got your hand up and you got the clapping hand. Your last name is ECHTA. Talk to me.
Thank you. Thank you, Greg. I've really enjoyed your session, and you strike me as a very conversational person. So and also a very tech gifted person. I just want to ask a simple question. You made mention of when your boss told you he's going to put you in front of the customer, and so you do more of the talking. So what did your boss see that made him make that decision to put you in front of the customer? Like, what were you doing that made your boss to say, okay, I think you are gifted to sell to the customer? And were you just opposing your job? Like, you said you are a pen tester and then a Cisco, infrastructure engineer. So were you combining your people skill alongside your technical skill? And what was that people skill you were exhibiting that your boss said, okay, I'm going to put you in front of the customer?
Great question. And I can answer it very easily because I remember it like it was yesterday. I was explaining a highly technical problem. I didn't even know my boss was listening. He was like around the corner in his cubicle or whatever, and he overheard me. I was explaining a highly technical problem to a coworker. Remember I said earlier, in the work environment, sometimes you have to do stuff that is not to help you. I was doing that. And I evidently explained it so well to a coworker who did not understand what one of our own products did. He was like, DLP, how are we doing this DLP? What's the difference? It was literally, what was the difference between network DLP and endpoint DLP? Like, what's this data in rest, data in motion? I broke it down for him super easy, like on a napkin in like 30 seconds. And he, oh, I get it now, Greg. And he went about it. He was an engineer. He went about his business. My boss walks out of the office. We put you in front of clients tomorrow. Like, you go home, pack a suitcase. There's this meeting that I was going to go to, my boss speaking. I'm not going, you go. I think you're going to do a better job of explaining to the customer rather than me. Go, and then we'll see how it works out. You don't always have bosses that are that attentive or that have the ability. And that was don't take it wrong, sorry. That was a white guy. Like, he was so white, he was nearly transparent white. From Northeast. Like, I can't be like, ain't nothing. If you were to look at him, he'd trigger all the wrong emotions. But he was sensitive to the fact, and look, candidly, he's probably being a little selfish. He probably realized, if I put this dude in front of customers, I'm gonna make a killing. No problem. But he saw the opportunity. He saw the tool set, and he was like, Greg, the way you just explained that, I need you to go explain to this customer over here. Sent me home, told me get a suitcase. His secretary booked my trip, and I was in New York or something like that the day after. Great none of this you can plan. A lot of this you can't plan. A lot of this, it's, do you find what your lane is? Remember the first questions that were asked by David. Find what you're passionate about, what you're built for, do it. Since David pulled the cat out the bag, says it in the Bible too. Your gift will make a way for you. What's your gift? Use it. If your gift is not talking, go be a technical person. If your gift is numbers, go be the accountant. If you're, whatever it is, figure out what your gift is, lean in on it.
Nice.
It will make a way for you. David.
Yeah, thanks very much, Greg. So, this has just been great, Greg. I just can't thank you enough for the opportunity to interview you and to to hear you speak and to hear you share. Dio, you have one question before we go? Let me give you 10 seconds, Dio.
He's trying to unmute. I can see him pressing the mute button. It ain't working, bro.
While you work on that, I just want to thank everybody for being here. I had put into the chat a little earlier, thanks for the great knowledge. Hey, Marilyn, thank you again for coming and joining us. I had put into the chat a little earlier the link that we're going to be needing you guys to go to after this session. And I'll put it in right now so that you guys can get an opportunity to go to this link and then put your feedback in and let Cyversity know. That's a good question. I haven't spoken a lot about Cyversity, even though Cyversity is the group that sponsors this, right? What's your feeling about Cyversity's effort and their work, and how are you feeling? How is your contribution going? This is not putting you on the spot in any way, shape, or form, Greg. I know you. We know each other very reasonably well, but Cyversity is up to something big here, and they're touching what I consider to be a huge population, a vast population of resources that just hasn't been tapped for a couple of reasons, and we don't need to go into those reasons now. But your contribution to Cyversity and what you're doing with Cyversity it's obvious. I just wanted you to speak about that a little bit while Dio gets his question together.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's very, very easy. I recognized early on in my life and work that very often we will find ourselves in places where we feel sometimes you hear what's the word, syndrome, imposter syndrome. Sometimes you feel like it's imposter syndrome. Sometimes you just feel lonely, isolated, because no one else looks, acts, sounds, talks like you. And I've been in meetings where I walk in the meeting and I am the senior guy, like the big law firm down in South Carolina, in Columbia, like the capital of South Carolina, not the boondocks. They called us in to do consulting with them, and they had cybersecurity questions. I brought a sales team with me, and I am the senior guy. And they shook everyone's hand except me, because everyone else was white and I was black. And in the meeting, I'm talking to this board of the largest law firm at that time in South Carolina. And they're asking questions to me, but refusing to even look at me. They're looking at the guy across the table. And then he's like, I can't answer the question. Greg, would you chime in? And the whole entire meeting was like that. So sometimes you're going to find yourself in places where it's very obvious you're uncomfortable, you're not wanted, you don't fit in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And that was obviously an extreme case, but there's been other cases like that. And that's why when I saw and heard of Cyversity, I was like, this is exactly what we need. This is exactly what we need. If I can contribute, if I can help push a couple of people in the right direction and expose them to, there is a band of stuff that you could do, even if you're not technical, even if you're a marketing person, even if you're a salesperson, even if you're an accounting person, there is opportunities for all of us here. So I feel like it's my responsibility to give a leg up or a hand up to anyone that I can give a hand up to. So am I getting my value out of that in Cyversity? 150% yes. That's why we had the breakfast we had this morning. The breakfast was just a text sent out, hey, let's grab breakfast. And we grabbed breakfast and it was phenomenal. The conference that whenever it is probably going to be closer to the end of the year, I'm gonna be there. Same thing. Why? And nobody's paying for that ticket for me to go. Like that's coming out of my pocket. I pay for the hotel, et cetera, because it's an important sacrifice. Because all of us need to be exposed to, it's not just the $100,000 salary that you're going after. There's influence, there's leadership opportunities, there's people that are waiting for you to get out of your own way to be successful, to help them up. And it's on all of us to do that. So yeah, that's the value I get out of Cyversity, and that's why I'm here.
Yeah, I can't think
Dio.
enough again.
Yes. Yes, thank you for that. I wanted to ask concerning you highlighted salaries, and you're talking about how people are not very good with managing salaries, especially now for people who are joining in, worried that they won't be able to get that particular job role. At the same time, they also know that they also have bills to pay. So how does someone manage such a situation?
That's less of a cybersecurity or infosec question, and that's a life question.
Absolutely.
My trick has been live below my means. For most of like the reason my wife and I could uproot and move to the US with after buying a car, maybe $900, because we had like no bills. So live below your means. I have cars now, multiple cars. Most of them were paid for in cash. Live below your means. I can afford lots of loans and lots of credit cards. Most of my credit cards, all of my credit cards are paid off at the end of the month. Live below your means. And I am not the instigator of that. That's my wife. My wife is the master in being a cheap son of a gun. And I adhere to her. Simple as that. So yeah, and if you don't grasp that and get a handle on that sooner, even as you start finding success, you're going to find it's going to be like being successful in a boat with a leak. You're constantly digging yourself out of drowning, even though the boat's fast and got a great motor, but it got a big leak. So you can't even enjoy the boat because you're too busy scooping water out of it. So yeah, it's important that as early as possible, you start understanding the skill of how do I live with little. I can give you a Bible scripture on that as well, but I defer. Unless someone asks me explicitly, I won't say it. Go ahead, David.
I'll tell you what, though, having a financial plan is probably the best way to get to what Greg is saying. I've always said to my sons, Greg's got, I think, all girls, I got all boys. I've always said to my sons, the 50-30-20 rule, right? And it's a simple approach because 50% of everything you make, every paycheck goes to your bills. 30% goes into the bank and 20% goes into your pocket to live on. And you can tighten that up too, but it's a very simple life plan that helps you get to where you need to go. 50-30-20, you keep that in mind about and stress your plan around that. But I don't want to speak up what Greg said because Greg has got the great point. And I appreciate all that we've learned and heard today. If there are no other questions, Greg, you can give us your parting comments, my brother. I so appreciate you coming and speaking with us today. It's really great. It's really been great, Greg. I agree. I'm not blowing, man. It's just been great. It really has, man.
I agree. It's been good for me as well. I loved engaging with the audience. I see all of the comments there in the chat. The chat's here scrolling down my screen. I love the questions. I love the just some of the questions were really, really candid. Beverly's question, the other gentleman's question about from the Bahamas and how you moved there. These are good questions. We need to be able to talk about these things in an open forum and just be transparent with each other. So thank you for the opportunity, David. Thank you for the invite. I'm here whenever. If anybody wants to reach out, I see someone drop the LinkedIn there. Reach out. Hayden, we're going to link up soon. Hayden is another Caribbean person here on the call. Don't mess with us Caribbeans. We get out there, we grind, we hustle for you. Anyway.
Yes, she.
Thank you. Genuinely, thank you. It's been an honor.
Guys, thanks again. Thanks everybody for joining. I appreciate it much. Next week, I'm going to share this really quickly. Next month, we're going to have, come on now. Just want to just blow this up for you guys. Next month, can't get it. There it is. I'm sorry, I have to put it up that way. That's really not that great. But nonetheless, next month we have the executive director from Khakis SOC, their security SOC, Dr. Lewis Pate. He just became a doctor, by the way, too. So you should come and listen to him. And then after him, in July, we're going to be, in July, we're going to be speaking to the CISO of the company that I represent, very much in the same fashion that Greg represents Palo Alto, Lamont Orange. He's the Chief Information Security Officer for Netscope. And then also in the month of August, we'll be talking to Olivia Rose. She's the founder of the Rose Group, CIO Group. She's also a board member for Cyversity. She's going to be joined by two of her colleagues, Abby and I think Toby, who actually help her run Cyversity's mentorship program. So come if you're interested in learning about mentorship. In September, which is going to be Hispanic and Latino Heritage Month, I'm going to be talking to a good friend of mine. Her name is Elizabeth Augusto. She's the Chief Operating Officer for Bank of New York. And then after that, in October, Daniel Conroy, Chief Technology Officer for Raytheon, Digital Officer for Raytheon. And closing the year out in November is going to be Sharon Burgess, who's going to be our incoming chairman of the board for Cyversity. She's going to be coming and speaking to us. She's the SVP, or the Senior Vice President and Chief Information Security for BDC, which happens to be budget. So look, this year is going to be, we're closing out with a great bang. I'm happy you've all come to spend some time with us. It's been a great. Greg, you belong in that whole group of people that we just said. I'm so happy to have you here to speak your truth and really speak also to blend in your philosophical approaches on life and how those actually create servant leadership around who you are and what you've done. I'm blessed to have you in my life.
Can I have one more closing comment, David?
Give it to me.
Doc, don't think I ain't see your question, fam. Doc said he wants the verse. The verse is one that's often misused. Philippians 4:13. I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. Now, every time you hear that verse, you think, like I grew up being told, you could be good in math, you can go home, you can go to school and do good in this test, you're going to do good at the football game because Christ strengthens you. The key, though, is that verse is only applicable to what Dio asked. How do you live below your means? Because what the verse is actually talking about, you go up 3 verses before, Paul says, who wrote the verse, I can do without. I've had food and I have had no food. I've had roof over my head and I've had no roof over my head. I've been rich and I've been poor. And then he says, but I could do all things because Christ strengthens me. What he's talking about is I could do without. I could be hungry. When my wife met me, almost 30 years ago, I was living in a pickup truck. The pickup truck wasn't even mine. I was sleeping on a golf course in the Caribbean because I had nowhere to stay, in the pickup truck of the telephone company that I worked for. And it was a small Toyota Hiace pickup truck. Wasn't even a nice big Ford F-150. And I am walking proof that God told me, dude, you're going to do in that house with nothing and you're going to be happy. Philippians 4:13. I could do all things because Christ strengthens me, even the hard things.
I appreciate that
hard
because I
things.
grew up in St. Vincent, so I understand fully what you say.
Yep. Sometimes we do it out, bro. Yep. Good stuff. I'm gonna shut up now, David. Thank you. Thanks for asking that question, Doc.
Never that. And thanks very much, Doc. Thanks for your question as well. If there are no other questions, I'm going to close this out. We've been here for literally about almost 2 hours. So this is the benefit of Cyversity's Impact Interview Series. When we get an opportunity to talk to folks like Greg, down to earth people, I realize that technology is in its infancy and it has a certain level of elitism to it, but this is the essence of what we're talking about, right? Just get right down to it and be guttural. Greg, come back and attend some of our other sessions that are coming up. Lend your countenance and lend your engagement, your wisdom, and your time and your purpose there too. I enjoyed it. I hope everybody else enjoyed it. I'm gonna say good night to everyone, or good afternoon. I'm in Texas. We're all in Texas here, Greg. So thanks very much, everyone, and have a great time. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
And please comment. Love it. Hey, before you go, is this Saturday thing good, or should we be on a weekday?
Saturday worked for me. If it wasn't a weekday, I wouldn't have been able to do it.
Yvette, what's up? Saturday or the weekend?
Saturday.
Saturday.
David, is good.
Damn, it's killing me.
What? You ready to
Well,
go
you
out?
know, hey, well,
Nice try, though.
You know, it's the deal, because we certainly want to have more people here, so we've got to do something that draws people to the Saturday. I get it. I get it. Hey, well, God be with you folks, man. Thank you very much for getting there. Hayden, you might want to stay on or wait for me to call you, one or the other, brother. Which is it? You on?
I'll wait for you to call me.
Good,
Or
man.
we can
Look at
stay
that.
on. We can stay on. Let's stay on. That might be easier.
There you go. There you go.
Cheers,
Hey, everybody else,
Amanda.
thanks very much. Thanks for being here. I'm sorry, Sean. What's up, buddy? What you say, Sean?
I was just saying bye to everybody.
Man, it's good to see your face, Sean.
Yeah,
Seriously, man. It's good to
next
see you,
meeting.
brother.
Hopefully be on the plane during our next meeting. So
That's all right. Either way, that's all right, man. Good to see you. Thanks, Yvette. Greg, thanks. Hayden, Bev. Thanks, Bev. I see you guys. Be good. Stay with me, Hayden.
Have a
Dio, I
great
see you
one.
later, Dio. Thanks, Yvette, for coming. Purple, Lavin, that's royalty, by the way.
Hit me back when you get a chance, David.
I will, cuz.
okay, Jake is crying.
Actually, let me get on.
David. David.
All right. It looks like you dropped off.
You dropped off.
I don't know. Yeah, it looks like that.
Yeah.
Huh. All right. Maybe he didn't mean to end himself. I put in. Yeah, he dropped off. Yeah. All right, man. Guess I'll see you.
Yes, okay.
Take it easy. Have a good weekend. Enjoy the long weekend, man.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.